The Psychopathology of Everyday Life by Sigmund Freud. Introduction. The Psychopathology of Everyday Life. The Psychopathology of Everyday Life is one of Sigmund Freud's most essential and accessible works, first published in 1901. In this book, Freud delves into unconscious processes that influence human behavior in everyday situations. He introduces that our minds are shaped by deeper unconscious forces, manifesting in small, seemingly trivial actions, such as forgetting names, slipping up in speech, often referred to as Freudian slips, misplacing objects, or even daydreaming. Freud explores how these occurrences are not just random accidents, but deeply connected to unconscious desires, thoughts, and conflicts. This book explores the hidden workings of the mind, challenging the commonly held belief that our daily actions are merely practical and logical. Instead, Freud argues that they often reveal unresolved mental tensions and desires, providing insight into the complexity of human psychology. Freud's ideas laid the groundwork for psychoanalysis, a method of treatment that seeks to explore the unconscious roots of psychological problems, and his work continues to influence modern psychology and psychiatry. Chapter 1. The Nature of Errors. Freud explains that the phenomena we perceive as errors or accidents in everyday life are not as random as they may seem. He refers to these occurrences as parapraxes, a term he coined for actions that appear to be mistakes, but are, in fact, deeply meaningful. These errors can take many forms: forgetting a name, a misstep while walking, or a slip of the tongue. Freud emphasizes that these actions are not purely accidental, but are expressions of unconscious desires or repressed thoughts. In this chapter, Freud introduces the idea that the unconscious mind holds repressed desires and memories, which, under certain circumstances, emerge in disguised forms. He explains that these parapraxes often reflect inner conflicts between desires, social expectations, and moral standards. For example, when we forget a person's name, it may be because the unconscious mind associates that person with something unpleasant or unwanted, which the conscious mind wishes to avoid. The chapter serves as an essential introduction to Freud's larger argument that everyday life is rife with signs of the unconscious. These signs, which we may interpret as mistakes or coincidences, are the mind's way of revealing more profound truths about the individual's internal world. Chapter 2. The Freudian Slip. One of the most famous concepts from Freud's The Psychopathology of Everyday Life is the idea of the Freudian slip, also known as a slip of the tongue. In this chapter, Freud explains that when people accidentally utter words they didn't intend to say, those words often reveal repressed thoughts, desires, or emotions. According to Freud, the unconscious mind is constantly at work beneath the surface of conscious awareness, and these slips allow hidden feelings to emerge. Freud provides numerous examples of Freudian slips, such as when someone calls their partner by the name of an ex-lover, or when a person says something embarrassing in public by mistake. These slips, Freud argues, are not accidental. They represent a momentary release of unconscious material. He also discusses how these errors are often misinterpreted by individuals themselves, who tend to rationalize their behavior to protect their self-image or maintain social norms. Freud stresses that these verbal mistakes reveal more than just random occurrences or momentary lapses in attention. They are expressions of unconscious wishes, feelings, or desires that have been repressed due to societal norms or personal inhibitions. Therefore, the slip of the tongue is a window into the deeper, hidden aspects of the mind, and understanding these moments can help uncover repressed thoughts and unresolved conflicts. Chapter 3. Forgetting Names and Words. This chapter focuses on another form of everyday error: forgetting names, words, or appointments. Freud suggests that when we forget someone's name, it's not just a failure of memory. Instead, it may be a sign that our unconscious mind is actively suppressing that name due to negative associations, unresolved conflicts, or suppressed desires connected to that person. For example, forgetting the name of someone we dislike might be our unconscious mind's way of avoiding or repressing our negative emotions toward them. Freud also explores how we might forget words, phrases, or ideas we consciously want to remember. He argues that word forgetting often occurs when the word or idea is linked to repressed emotions or experiences. These could include feelings of guilt, shame, or anxiety that we are trying to avoid confronting. Freud compares these occurrences to the mental processes in dreams, where repressed content is disguised in a form that allows it to emerge without fully confronting the conscious mind. By examining these ordinary lapses in memory, Freud highlights the intricate relationship between the conscious and unconscious mind. The everyday act of forgetting is not simply a random memory failure, but intricately tied to deeper psychological forces beneath the surface. Chapter 4. The Role of Humor. In this chapter, Freud turns his attention to humor, another behavior that reflects unconscious desires and conflicts. He argues that humor, like other forms of psychic activity, is a means by which repressed material can emerge in a socially acceptable form. Freud compares jokes to dreams, asserting that both serve to express unconscious wishes and emotions, but with a veil of disguise that allows for greater acceptance by society. Freud describes how jokes often release psychological tension, particularly when they address taboo subjects such as sex, death, or aggression. A well-timed joke can offer insight into the unconscious mind's desires by allowing these desires to be expressed in a non-threatening way. Freud also discusses how the social context of humor plays a crucial role. What may be funny or acceptable in one context may be inappropriate or offensive in another, as humor reflects social norms and boundaries. This chapter illustrates that humor is not just a trivial pastime, but a complex psychological phenomenon that can reveal hidden emotional states and conflicts. Freud's analysis of humor deepens our understanding of how the unconscious mind operates in everyday life, providing an outlet for repressed material in a form that is often masked and indirect. Chapter 5. Misplacing objects. In this chapter, Freud addresses another common phenomenon, misplacing objects. Freud suggests that losing something or placing it in an odd location may be an unconscious act of resistance. He explains that these moments of forgetfulness are often linked to unconscious conflicts or desires. For example, misplacing keys could reflect an unconscious desire to avoid leaving the house, possibly due to anxiety or fear. Similarly, forgetting where we put an object might be connected to a feeling of ambivalence or reluctance toward using it. Freud also explores the symbolic meanings of objects and how these meanings might play a role in their misplacement. Objects can acquire symbolic value, representing emotions or desires the conscious mind is unaware of. For instance, a misplaced gift might symbolize the unconscious struggle with feelings of obligation, guilt, or unresolved emotions toward the giver. Through these examples, Freud asserts that everyday occurrences, such as losing an object, are not random events, but are deeply linked to unconscious desires, conflicts, and repressed memories. Chapter 6. Dreams and their relation to psychopathology. In this final chapter of the book's first part, Freud transitions from everyday life to a more detailed analysis of dreams. Although dreams are not strictly part of everyday life in the conventional sense, Freud argues that they are intricately connected to the unconscious forces that shape our daily behavior. He parallels how we misplace objects, forget words, or make tongue slips, and the mechanisms that operate during sleep to shape our dreams. Freud contends that dreams are a form of wish fulfillment and disguised expressions of repressed desires or unresolved conflicts. He compares the interpretation of dreams to the analysis of everyday errors, suggesting that both offer a glimpse into the unconscious mind. Freud also emphasizes that dreams, like slips of the tongue and forgotten words, are often distorted, making it necessary to interpret them in a way that uncovers the underlying, repressed material. Chapter 7. The Psychological Mechanisms of Forgetting. In this chapter, Freud further explores the mechanisms behind forgetting, particularly how and why individuals forget certain information or experiences. Freud argues that forgetting is not just a passive memory lapse, but a psychological defense mechanism. He introduces the concept of repression, stating that we often forget things consciously because they are associated with unpleasant feelings or uncomfortable truths that our mind wants to suppress. For example, someone might forget an awkward conversation because the memory is linked to feelings of guilt, shame, or anxiety. Freud emphasizes that these forgotten memories are not lost forever, but are pushed into the unconscious, where they continue influencing behavior. The process of repression is unconscious, meaning the individual is unaware that they are actively avoiding or forgetting specific memories. These repressed memories and desires may emerge later, often in distorted forms, such as through dreams, slips of the tongue, or other forms of psychopathology in everyday life. Focusing on the psychological mechanisms behind forgetting, Freud deepens our understanding of how the unconscious mind works to protect us from emotional pain. Yet, at the same time, these repressed memories can continue to affect our lives in unexpected ways. Chapter 8. The role of associations in memory. In this chapter, Freud examines the role of associations in memory and how these associations can lead to errors or lapses in memory. Freud explores the idea that memories are not stored in isolated compartments, but are linked to one another through associations. For instance, a specific word or event may trigger memories of other related experiences, which can sometimes result in confusion or false recollections. Freud describes how the mind can distort memories by emphasizing specific associations while suppressing others. These associations are not purely random. Instead, they are shaped by the individual's emotional experiences and unconscious desires. Freud believes that the formation of associations is deeply connected to repressed thoughts or feelings, which the mind tries to reconcile or make sense of. This process can lead to faulty memory or errors in recollection, as the unconscious mind influences how we remember certain events or individuals. Freud's exploration of associations in memory is central to understanding how the unconscious mind functions, as it highlights the intricate ways in which the mind links and reorganizes experiences, often to avoid or repress emotionally painful memories. These associations can influence not just memory, but also how we think and act in our everyday lives. Chapter 9. The function of the unconscious mind in everyday life. In this chapter, Freud provides a detailed analysis of the unconscious mind, emphasizing its fundamental role in shaping behavior. He argues that the unconscious is not merely a repository for repressed memories or desires, but is an active and dynamic force that governs many aspects of our thoughts and actions. The unconscious mind operates on a deeper, hidden level, influencing everything from speech patterns to actions and even our relationships. The unconscious mind is filled with suppressed memories, desires, and emotions that individuals are unaware of, yet these elements significantly influence their everyday lives. Freud notes that these unconscious forces often manifest in what we consider errors, such as forgetting names, misplacing objects, or making verbal slips. He also links the unconscious to our dreams, suggesting that it is through dreams that the unconscious mind reveals itself most clearly. These manifestations are, in essence, windows into the unconscious that can provide valuable insights into a person's mental and emotional state. In this chapter, Freud also discusses the role of the unconscious in forming our personalities and behaviors. He asserts that much of what we think of as rational or conscious behavior is shaped by deeper unconscious processes, some of which are rooted in early childhood experiences. According to Freud, the unconscious mind is not a passive force, but an active player in shaping how we interact with the world. Chapter 10. The influence of repression on behavior. Freud explores in this chapter how repression is a crucial factor in shaping human behavior. Repression is the psychological process by which painful or socially unacceptable thoughts, memories, or desires are pushed out of conscious awareness. Freud suggests that the mind actively works to suppress these uncomfortable or threatening elements because confronting them would cause significant emotional distress. Repressed material does not disappear. It continues to affect the individual unconsciously. Freud argues that repressed thoughts can manifest subtly, such as through mistakes, slips of the tongue, and other behaviors that seem out of character or irrational. For example, someone may repress feelings of anger toward a close friend, only to express that anger unintentionally through a sarcastic comment or an emotionally charged gesture. These behaviors are not random, but result from unresolved conflicts within the unconscious mind. Freud's theory of repression highlights the complexity of the human psyche and how individuals navigate the tension between their desires and societal expectations. Repression is both a protective mechanism and a source of psychological distress, as repressed desires and emotions continue to influence behavior even when they are not consciously recognized. Chapter 11. The role of the superego in everyday life. In this chapter, Freud examines the role of the superego in shaping everyday behavior. The superego is the part of the psyche that represents internalized societal rules, moral standards, and the voice of conscience. It develops due to interactions with parents, caregivers, and societal institutions, and it plays a crucial role in regulating behavior according to these moral principles. Freud argues that the superego often conflicts with the ID, representing primal desires and impulses. This conflict creates tension within the individual, leading to guilt, shame, or anxiety when one's desires conflict with moral standards. In many ways, the superego is the source of repression, as it pushes individuals to suppress impulses deemed unacceptable by society. Freud discusses how the superego can influence behavior in subtle ways. For instance, someone may avoid certain behaviors or actions not because they do not want to do them, but because they have internalized societal norms that prevent them from acting on their desires. The superego's influence extends to small, everyday actions, such as choosing not to act on an impulse or deciding to adhere to socially acceptable behaviors. Freud's analysis of the superego adds another layer of understanding to the dynamics of everyday life, showing how internalized moral values shape our decisions, actions, and self-perception. Chapter 12: The Impact of Childhood Experiences on Everyday Life. Freud concludes the discussion of everyday life and its relationship to the unconscious by turning to the importance of childhood experiences. He believes that many behaviors and patterns we exhibit are unresolved conflicts or repressed memories from childhood that influence adults. Early experiences, particularly those related to family dynamics, trauma, and social interactions, lay the foundation for how the mind develops and functions later in life. Freud argues that children go through stages of psychosexual development, and unresolved conflicts at any stage can have lasting effects on adult behavior. For example, a child who experiences excessive criticism or neglect may develop feelings of inadequacy or low self-esteem that persist into adulthood. These early experiences can shape not only how individuals perceive themselves, but also how they interact with others in their everyday lives. According to Freud, the unconscious mind is deeply influenced by these early experiences, which are often repressed or forgotten. However, these childhood conflicts manifest in adulthood through everyday behaviors and errors. Freud emphasizes that understanding these early influences is key to uncovering the root causes of psychological distress and dysfunction in adult life. This chapter reinforces Freud's belief that past and present experiences shape the psyche, and that the unconscious mind is key to understanding human behavior. Conclusion: in the Psychopathology of Everyday Life, Freud explores how the unconscious mind shapes our daily actions, thoughts, and interactions. Freud reveals that these mistakes are not accidental by analyzing seemingly trivial errors, such as tongue slips, forgetting names, and misplacing objects. Still, they are manifestations of deeper unconscious desires and conflicts. By examining the mechanisms behind these everyday occurrences, Freud demonstrates that much of our behavior is influenced by unconscious processes, many of which are shaped by repressed memories, early childhood experiences, and internalized moral standards. The book emphasizes the complex interplay between the conscious and unconscious mind, and provides a detailed framework for understanding the underlying psychological forces that drive human behavior. Freud's work in this book laid the groundwork for the development of psychoanalysis, which remains a crucial psychological treatment method. His exploration of the unconscious continues to be influential, shaping not only psychoanalytic theory, but also modern psychological practice. The Psychopathology of Everyday Life invites us to look beyond the surface of our everyday actions and consider the deeper, often hidden forces that shape our lives. That's it for now. Please let us know in the comments what you learned from this summary. Thanks for your time. See you later.